I think everybody puts such pressure on themselves to like, I gotta find my sound, I gotta find my brand, I gotta figure it out like tomorrow. And there's something to be said of like, take your time. Like this was that part of our career. I don't even know that was like career yet, but that part of us starting was the most fun and the most experimental. And like, we did plenty of stuff that still sits on my hard drive that didn't work for Disco Fries, but it worked for Syncs and it worked for other opportunities. And I think it was just as important as us strategically planning a Tiesto record. It was the same way of us like sitting in a dorm room, just messing around and figuring out what we wanted to do.
Welcome to Psych Drop, a podcast that's psychology-based for DJs and music professionals and industry decision makers in electronic dance music. I'm Dr. Sunni, performance psychologist and executive coach. And whether you see yourself as an artist or an entrepreneur or something in between, leadership is really already part of the job. So on this show, what we do is we explore the psychology behind the performance, pressure, leadership, burnout and resilience, music industry stress, and decision-making under pressure that you both know so well in this industry. So really, we're just kind of going behind the scenes with what it takes to last in this industry, off stage and beyond the DJ booth. So today we have here with us the Disco Fries, really excited. Nick and Danny both here. We have two fries, and I'm sure everyone tuning into this podcast already knows who you both are, but just a quick bio. For more than a decade, the Disco Fries have built one of the music's most respected production brands, earning Billboard No.1 records, hundreds of millions of streams, and releases across leading dance labels, including Spinnin', Armada, Atlantic, RCA, Musical Freedom, and Strictly Rhythm. Their breakout collab, Concrete Heart with Vassy, reached #1 on Billboard's Dance Club Songs chart and U.S. Dance Radio, while the duo's productions and remixes have received global support from artists including Tiesto, Diplo, Cascade, Steve Aoki, and Hardwell. Welcome, guys. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. So
Really
crazy
excited
hearing our bio. Like, I never read our bio ever. And like, we've done a lot of really cool stuff. And like, if I heard that about somebody else, I'd be like, well, that's awesome. But like, when you're doing it, you just forget you're doing it. You just keep moving. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Or like if we run into someone outside of the industry that asks what we do, we're like, we make music stuff.
Yeah.
I need to ingrain like a 1 or 2 sentence like this is what
Flex.
we do impressive. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're just going to bring Sunny along for all introductions in life.
Well, you definitely do need, like, especially for people outside of the industry, people inside the industry are super impressed by this. But I think a lot of times if you're meeting somebody who's not in the industry, you're like, how do I even explain this? Because they're not going to get it.
Yeah. I mean, even our parents who like have been aware of our career from the beginning, like I think day to day, they probably still don't entirely get what we do.
No, my dad will come over my house and like wander down to my basement where my studio is here. And he'll be like, so what are you doing? And I'll just have like 40 tabs open and there's 5,000 things going on, 50 fires. And I'm like, working, Dad. He's like, you look like you're just sitting there like putzing around. And I'm like, no, dude, there's stuff going on, man. All right. I can't even explain it all.
I understand this for sure, but I also agree that other people outside the industry don't really get it. So, I know you both have been doing this for over a decade. I want to like start off by getting back to the roots. And when you both started this project of the Disco Fries back in your college dorm room, how did you start? And then at what point did you shift from like, this is fun to this is something we're actually building as a career?
Well, I mean, yeah, like you said, we met in college. We were just roomed together in the dorms by chance freshman year. I don't know, we didn't really like start making anything that was more dance or like Disco Fries leaning until a couple years in. But funny enough, like it was almost a business from the start in some ways. We went to a music school, so like we both went in with the mentality of this is the career path we want. It wasn't like a side thing at any point. But I mean, right from the start, we were doing like, I don't know, we were trying to pitch our music for syncs and doing like DJ edits for sale and stuff like that. So even our earliest stuff, it was still it kind of had like a business angle to it, right, Nick?
Yeah, I think we targeted. Well, I mean, once we started iterating on like dance music a few years in, like we targeted DJs right away because I came from that world. So I kind of knew like once you got it in the hands of a DJ, that was your automatic amplifier for your brand. And we started around the time of like Bloghouse and Hype 'em and This Song Is Sick, and like all the blogs were popping. So we kind of had this kind of perfect storm of things happening between us hitting like mix show and dance guys across the world, and also the blogs really taking off at that time. So it allowed us to really like slot in that stuff and amplify it quickly. And now, like obviously TikTok and socials and everything are like the equivalent of what we were doing then.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I'll also just say that's not to say that we had any idea of what we were doing to run it as a business or that we treated it seriously from the start. It's just, it's interesting to look back and realize, oh yeah, like there was kind of like a business or some kind of mentality there from the beginning, but at the same time we were kids in college, like very much just making stuff for fun, doing what we wanted, and then just kind of figuring out how that could fit into the broader picture as we went.
Yeah, which by the way, just like on that, because I know there's like a lot of new producers and stuff that listen to your show. Like I think everybody puts such pressure on themselves to like, I gotta find my sound, I gotta find my brand, I gotta figure it out like tomorrow. And there's something to be said of like, take your time. Like this was that part of our career. I don't even know that was like career yet. But that part of us starting was the most fun and the most experimental. And like, we did plenty of stuff that still sits on my hard drive that didn't work for Disco for Eyes, but it worked for syncs and it worked for other opportunities. And I think it was just as important as us strategically planning a Tiesto record. It was the same way of us like sitting in a dorm room, just messing around and figuring out what we wanted to do. I think that gets overlooked sometimes when everybody like feels the need to be so far ahead so quickly that they want to develop something like a business right away. And at the end of the day, this is art. So you do have to take your time with it. And you can figure it out and just be creative and throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
That's really interesting. Like I heard you say so many different things that I want to sort of jump on here, but
I'm only a cup in. I'm only one cup in.
You may need a whole pot. I'm just kidding. So, but I think the last thing you said, that producers do feel this pressure to find their sound right away. Sometimes I think artists can be so business focused, right? Or you sometimes have the other end of the spectrum where they're not business focused enough. But it sounds like from the start, I'm hearing that you both had an idea in mind of business, right? That this would be a business. You didn't really know what or how, but you started figuring it out together.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we've done so many interviews where we talk about the power of a duo, and I feel like redundant saying it, but there's always somebody new listening, so I need to say it again. Like, it doesn't always have to be a forward-facing duo. It could be you as the artist and then somebody that you really trust that's help guiding your ship on the business side if you're really not good at it. But there's something to be said about two people or just a collaborative effort, or you and your homies that are like behind you figuring it out and pushing the art forward, because if it sits on the hard drive, it doesn't do anything for anybody. And also, like, I think artists and people who are super business minded like get in their own head about decisions a lot, and it's good to have somebody to bounce that stuff off of.
Yeah, well, you two are my first duo on the pod, so that's super exciting. And I'm really curious about that because I can see and have heard, right, the pros and cons of being in a duo. And I am really curious about how the two of you, I know you said it's helpful to have someone to bounce ideas off of and things, but how do you deal with disagreements and creative differences?
I think it helped for us that we already had like a friend relationship going into it. I mean, I know that can make it complicated in other ways, like if there's baggage coming into it, but like our personalities just clicked really well in the sense that we both excel in different areas. And so there wasn't a lot of like, it's not like two type A personalities butting heads. Like, we both kind of gravitate towards different ends of the spectrum in terms of like what needs to get done to run a business as an artist. So there hasn't really been a whole lot of disagreements, like the occasional creative difference in music making. But even that, like, it's always just sort of been like, if this is really important to you, then cool, like not that big a deal. But and same thing on the business side. Occasionally, I mean, if anything, it's more helpful having the partner, because then occasionally, like, Nick typically handles more of the business stuff, and he might be responding to some, situation dealing with a label or with an artist or something where he's really heated, and he's written out this thing and he can bounce it off of me. I literally just did this
I have no idea
vice
what you're
versa
talking
yesterday.
about.
But like, sometimes you're like, he's gonna send an email off and he sends it to me. He's like, how does this read to you? And then you could just real quick be like, I get where you're coming from. Let's reword this a little bit, make it a little bit so we're not burning bridges or it doesn't come off as aggressive. Like, I don't know. I honestly can't think of like a situation where we butted heads that it's really been stuck with me.
I guess more broadly, like the point of that is like, it's obviously got to be somebody you trust and you trust their skill and what they excel at. So if it is a friend and you trust that if you're like the artist type and you trust that they're really good with people, let them be good with people. Like Danny's awesome in the studio and now he runs our label and he's friggin' amazing at it. So I don't muck with his stuff. I trust his process and I know he knows what he's doing. Of course, like if he wants feedback or I have an idea, whatever, of course I bounce it off of him, but you got to trust the people you're with. And I think that kind of plays into a broader conversation of when you bring on an agent or you bring on a manager, when you have conversations with those people, just because they're the biggest fish in the room and they're the biggest, shiniest object and they're the biggest label or the biggest manager, if you don't get along with them or like you don't click, that's going to be an issue because those are people that you deal with every day. So I think it's important to see stuff through that lens. But at the same time, the balance is like sometimes that agent is going to be an asshole. Like that's their job. So while you have to get along with them and you have to work well with them, just know that like at the end of the day, they have to go to bat for you. And you want them to put on the best face for your brand and you as an artist. So when you show up, the promoter or the label or whoever it is, manager or agent, isn't like rubbed the wrong way. But also you want them to go to bat for you. So it is like, it's a bit of a balance, but at the end of the day, like you have to get along with that person and you have to trust them.
Trust, I think, is huge. I was talking about this with Conrad Taylor on a previous episode, and the trust that he has with his management and how that really is everything. And I think something that I see with artists every day is getting burned in this industry, right? Finding people that you can't trust. And I think that can really get in the way of then building trust as you move forward, right? When you're building a team. And like you said, whether you're in a duo or, you have a team, a management team, or just one person that you're working with, the trust piece is really the foundation for everything.
We've developed that over time. Like I mean, we both know that one bad relationship in the industry doesn't mean that all relationships are going to be like that. But you start to get like feelers or like a spidey sense of like, I'm getting weird vibes from this. Like, I'm going to keep my antenna up because I know like this is showing signs that it's going to run into issues like I've seen in the past. So I think we use that all the time of like, you just kind of can recognize patterns and see like, this person's trying to pull something, or I can tell down the line this is going to be an issue. So let's make sure we have all of our paperwork, locked up so that we don't run into issues down the line, because we've run into tons of problems over the years of like, you're working with friends, everyone's cool, you're in the studio making something, and then when it comes time, like, oh, some money came in, we forgot, we never got the splits down, and blah blah blah. Now like that conversation after the fact is difficult. So with some people, they're totally cool, like, yeah, let's split it 3 ways, whatever. But with other people, they try to get as much as they can. And so you start to figure out who those personalities are, and then that you just have to have all of your stuff in order in time.
So I'm hearing that over time, you said you've developed this Spidey sense, right, of who you can trust. And I think, you've learned to proceed with caution, right, in certain situations. And I think that this industry is small. And you do, over time, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about who you can trust and, where you need to cross your T's and dot your I's. But the trust piece is so basic for team building, management, duo, and then also to taking that a step further, what you're saying is the collaboration piece. And I know a lot of artists struggle with building those relationships, building that trust to get to the point of collaborating. I think so many collaborations don't end up happening, or they go badly. So I'd love to talk with you a little bit more about suggestions you have, things you've learned about the collab process over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I love this topic because I feel like it's something we've had to refine over time and kind of figure out. But the main part of it is just transparency from the beginning. And I think a lot of artists, including us in the beginning, it's hard to have a conversation about splits sometimes. It feels awkward and uncomfortable. It's hard to talk about a production fee and just all the business stuff nobody wants to talk about. But it's really important to put on the table up front, because when you're at the end of the record and the record's about to come out and it gets contracted, no one ever likes feeling surprised by, hey, I can't put this out now for this reason, or I can't do this without X amount of money right now. And it's like, why couldn't you have just said this up front? Because if you said it up front, one, either we would have figured that out and done that deal then, or we would have kindly passed and like nobody would be upset and it would be all good. That's the biggest part, is like over communicating what your expectations are on both sides. So everybody's just on the same page right from the jump. And I've tried to get better about that. Like when I put us into a situation for a collab, what it's going to look like. And if we intend to put it out on our label, I'll just say that up front. Like, I would love to do this collab with you because we really want to put it out on our label. And so it doesn't feel like at the end we're just trying to like jam them to put it out on our label. Like, that's not the intention. The intention would more be to like amplify the song because we're fully behind it at that point. So yeah, over communication for sure.
I like that. Over communication. I think it can sound like a bad thing, the way that you say, oh, you're doing something too much. But what you really are saying is that there's no such thing as communicating too much about what you're wanting to come out of this project from the beginning, as soon as you really know.
100%.
Danny, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with everything that Nick said. It is like an awkward thing. And I feel like we've gotten better at it over the years. Like it doesn't need to be a formal, like, here's our split sheet, our contract. The second we walk in the room, here you go. But it is like, there are ways to bring it up naturally. Like, especially like it gets complicated with us as a duo. Like, is the default, if we're working with another solo artist, is the default that it gets split between the two artists evenly? Is it a 3-way split? Like, right off the bat, there's already sort of like, it's not an easy sort of like situation where what the default is. So just as it's kind of like before you get the more time you spend on something, the more emotionally invested everyone gets. And as that builds, it gets more and more difficult to sort of like remove yourself and just be like, objectively, this is how it's should be split up, or this is what's fair. So the sooner you can do it, the easier it makes it, for sure.
Absolutely. And I heard you say the more emotions get invested. I think that is such a big component of being a creative, working in this industry while, navigating the business side as well and managing emotions, I think, in a lot of different situations, right? Not just a collab where you are very invested in what you've created, but I think there's so many situations where emotions can run high and people can either make poor decisions or decisions that they wouldn't make if they weren't in that state. Talk to me a little bit about navigating the emotions that come up, with the highs and the lows.
I think one of the things that we found out actually pretty early was like the amount of time that you spend on a record does not equal the success that you will see from that record. And it's really hard to sort of accept that when you're like, I don't know, there's songs where we've spent weeks of like details and like trying to get everything perfect. And maybe the label we signed with put like a ton of money behind it. And like, we really feel like this has everything it needs to go and it does absolutely nothing. And it's kind of soul crushing. But on the flip side, there's also records where we've done it in like a single session and we just threw it out there and it gets signed and it does its thing and blows up. So it's more like sort of expectation management. Even at this point, literally everything we put out, I assume is going to do absolutely nothing. Like, and that's not what I project and that's not what I hope for, but I kind of go in with the expectation that like we aren't entitled to anything and that, we'll give it the best push we can, but at the end of the day, the stars may not align. It could be, there's so many reasons why it might not connect, but you sort of have to understand that that's not really up to you. Obviously you can influence it, but at the end of the day, you can't force it to be like your biggest record. So I think expectation management can go a long ways in terms of like kind of dealing with the success or failure, of your music.
God, that was so well articulated. It's hard for me to follow that. But I'll say this. The only thing I'll say on that topic is Danny hit every point I would possibly hit. I don't know if it's divine intervention, like crystals, the universe, God, whatever. I can tell you that every record that's been insanely difficult with the business side of collaboration and like the label and like just an arduous grind has not been successful.
Yeah.
The records that have been fairly easy and that just like came together and it just moved and it went through the process and came out have all done really well for the most part.
Yeah.
And that is not in our control. So take that for what it is, but it's a pretty interesting thing that I've seen over, call it like the last 15 to 20 years of our career.
Yeah, facts. I think that kind of plays into the Spidey sense of it, is like you get the feeling as you're going, you're like, this feels like a little too much work. Like this doesn't feel effortless. And then you start to get those feelings of like, I don't know how this is going to do because it feels difficult and it feels forced, versus you don't really think about it when it's effortless and it just everything glides through. But yeah, I can't think of a single record that like did really well for us that wasn't relatively painless.
Okay. So to sum that up, I think the 2 points that stand out here are, Danny, what you're saying is that expectation management, right? I think if you are expecting something to do really well, the disappointment could be a lot greater. So not really getting ahead of yourself, knowing that, this can do well, this cannot do well, and just sort of staying present. I'm hearing to like managing, again, getting ahead of yourself with what you're thinking about a particular song. And then, Nick, what you're saying is more of this focusing on what's in your control. There's a lot that's not in your control when you're doing any release. So staying sort of focused on what you can do, the pieces that you're doing. And so what you're saying is very aligned with each other. I think it's about knowing that we don't know what will happen with this. We're putting it out there in the world. It can take off. It might not take off. It doesn't correlate necessarily always with how much work you've put into it, how much emotion you've invested in it. But if you do have all of these extreme expectations, there probably will be a lot more emotion on the back end that you'll have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Totally. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
So in terms of the highs and lows, thinking about times where you've had setbacks or rejections or things that haven't gone the way that you expected, if you did have expectations earlier on, how do you get through those? What advice do you have for artists?
Well, one, I think having our own label has been a huge relief on that side of things. So when a record doesn't land at our top 5 choices historically, like, you know, if we didn't have a label, we wouldn't have any means to like mobilize on it and put it out, and it just would die on our hard drive. So starting a label has helped that. It's helped us cultivate relationships with tons of new artists. It gives back to us in the same way we give to it. So it's just this like ever breathing, living thing that is amazing. But having that outlet, it also creatively, like all these new artists that have come through the label, we've been able to work with and collaborate with. So that sparks new ideas and stuff. So I think that's a huge, at least for me, that's like, that takes the pressure off a lot. Because when you're relying on third parties to do everything, there's really not much in your control. To your earlier point, there's less in the orbit of what you can actually handle and mobilize on and activate with. So for us, like the label is it. And I'd encourage any artist, it doesn't have to be this huge imprint by any means. Like just self-releasing your own music is something everybody should get in the habit of doing. So you learn the process. And also when you go to a label, then you know what to expect and you know what you're good at and how you promote something and like all the things you can do to help that label. So I think that's super important.
Yeah, that can help for sure. The other thing that we kind of preach to other artists, and I feel like we've always practiced it for the most part, is just like never putting all your eggs in one basket. Like we have a lot of projects that are going on concurrently. And so if one fails, I mean, this is probably benefits me more than Nick because I'm a little more checked out on the post-production side of stuff. But it's like if we finish a project and it's actively, being pitched, released, whatever, and it's not connecting, I'm more excited about the next thing that we're working on anyway. And so like it can kind of shield you where it's like, well, this thing isn't working out like we hoped, but I'm still excited about these other things that are going on. So kind of just never leaving yourself in a situation where it's all or nothing. Like if this thing doesn't connect, we're fried. And I feel like that's probably happened to us once or twice in our career where we really we were positive that this was like, we were on the rocket ship that was going to the moon and like, we got to hold everything else back because we don't want it to get in the way of this. But otherwise, just making sure that you have lots of opportunities to succeed can help sort of mitigate the impact of one not connecting.
Financially too, right? Like
yeah,
we notice a lot of artists that have that one record that, again, they've emotionally invested in. They feel they put tons of time into it. They feel like it's the one, and because of all that, they take like all their funding and put it into the one song. Now, when you zoom out and objectively look at it, like at 175,000 songs or whatever coming out a day, it's like, all right, odds are that's not going to be the one. It's great to put some of your funding into it to promote it and amplify it, but like spread it out. That would be the equivalent of a sports franchise spending their whole cap table on one player. And then they just draft guys for like 20 grand for the rest of the team. It's like, no, they don't spend all of it on one guy. They spread it out. Of course, some are paid more than others and so forth. And you want to allocate some records or radio records. You're going to have to spend a little more on those than club records. But yeah, to the earlier point of like, not all our eggs are in one basket. And that's how we treat the label too at some level. Like not every record is like the one, but there's plenty of like super dope records that come from guys that have one SoundCloud follower that we want to give a platform and help level up. Are we going to go like, gangbusters on that record as far as like our spend? No, probably not. But we're going to help them get a platform, get some playlisting and like move in the right direction. So the subsequent records have a little bit of a level up.
Okay. So there's a lot there. And I think it's all great advice, right? Starting off with the focusing on what's in your control and starting your own label. I think that is something that can be so beneficial for artists. And I have this conversation a lot, like in particular with GTO Feist and his starting Kane Records, just the idea that you're in control. And also then that other factor of it helping you to build relationships in the industry. That, again, is something in your control. That label gives you the leverage to talk to more people and to be on the other side of it, not just really artist facing. I think that is huge. And it sounds like a decision you made that really helped further your career with the label.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the other piece too is the not putting all of your eggs in one basket. Because if you have one thing that you are so emotionally invested in and so excited about, and it doesn't do well, then what do you have? Then you sort of you feel it's like an all or nothing situation, which I think can lead to then becoming unmotivated or not knowing where to start or how to pick yourself back up again. And really, I think feeling stuck when you're in situations like that. And the thing that you can control is, like you said, have a lot of different things going on that you're excited about, different projects. And it sounds like you both have done a really good job at that. Even just not with the Disco Fries, but with other things that you're doing with the label and all of your other revenue streams and things that you're doing. So talk to us a little bit more about how what you're doing outside of just the Disco Fries.
Yeah, I mean, like we've always had an interest in like growing in the music space in every capacity. So whether that's the label side, we have finishmytrack.com, so we do mixing and mastering and distribution through there. We've invested in different platforms, one being Arpeggi Labs, who's been super successful. So I think for us, like, it's not only about like creating new things just for the sake of creating them, it's also expanded our network. So like with Finish My Track, for example, like we started that during COVID. It allowed us to do a live stream for a few years. We met a ton of people like yourself and deepen relationships with people that we may have never had the ability to have a 3-hour or 2-hour conversation with somebody at Miami Music Week because it's just impossible. But when you invite them on a live stream and you're kind of like forced to talk to them for that amount of time, you have a deeper connection with them by default. Like us doing this, obviously, like this is more than we've ever talked to you.
Mm-hmm. We've tried before at AD, Miami.
But it's impossible. So I think like we've done all these things, because we're interested in them and we're always trying to do new stuff and expand our brand and everything we're doing. But also it's expanded our network and our relationships, which is the cornerstone of our career. So I know everybody says it, but like we preach talking to everybody. And to Danny's earlier point, the more people you talk to and then the more your network grows, the more you're able to notice those potential problematic situations and have that spidey sense of like, this person's awesome. I can detect that now because I've met this whole collection of people and I could see who I need to maybe navigate around. So that's been a huge part of our career.
Yeah, and I mean, just kind of touching off that networking and relationship side, like Sunny, you mentioned that the industry, like, it's really not that big, and it's kind of wild. You know, we've been doing this. I think we probably put our first remix out in 2008 or 2009, like that got picked up official, and like some of the people involved at that point, like we still deal with on a somewhat regular basis. And it's wild because you don't think of that when you're starting out. The music industry seems like huge, daunting. But when it gets down to it, like I was saying this is someone in Miami this year. We were at some, you know, like social mixer type thing. And I was like, literally everyone that I was talking to a newer artist, I was like, you don't realize it, but literally everyone that makes the decisions in the industry, like around what happens with your music, does it get featured, does it get plugged in over here, whatever, like is kind of in this room. And it just seems like a bunch of people, but it's like, it's real small. Like they can all be fit into, you know, kind of depending on what part of the market you're in. Like there's different pockets, whether it's US dance radio or like a bigger, you know, all the dance subgenres, like on the DSP side, like there's obviously different pockets and touring and all that kind of stuff. But it is like, we used to go to this, we used to go down to Atlantic City for like a music conference kind of thing. It was
DJX?
Yeah, so it was the DJ
I was there last year.
Yeah,
prior to that, summer sessions.
And the summer sessions, which was promo only, used to throw. And like, yeah, we met people there when we were handing out like demo CDs and business cards. That a lot of those people are still in the industry, and now we like talk to on a regular basis. Yeah, it's a small industry, and it's very important that you be one of those people that other people pick up on, like, those guys are all right. Like I know what they're about. I know like what we can do for each other. You don't want to be the let's go over this way. Those guys are difficult. And I know there are people in the industry that probably have that view of us. It's hard to be in the industry like close to 20 years and not have like a few relationships sour, but on the whole, you want like positive relationships, have like a good reputation, because without it, like it's hard to get anything done, for sure.
Absolutely. And I think having that record, the track record too, helps you build trust in new relationships, right? If you know someone that worked with somebody else and they had a good experience, then something's already building, right? You establish that relationship and that trust early on when you have these mutual connections, because it is really small. And, you know, you get to know people. And like you said, you decide what people you want to spend more time with and what people maybe you don't, or you don't want to work with off the bat. And just building those relationships is such a huge part of building your career and finding and getting different opportunities, whether that's collabs or for something completely different. Like I know that's happened for me in a lot of situations. And I think the other piece of all of the opportunities that come is the learning how to manage your energy and your time and when to say yes and when to say no. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm terrible about saying no. I say yes to so much. I'm much more of and it's a problem sometimes, but like I am always the one who's like, how can we spin this opportunity into something that makes sense? Even though it totally doesn't make sense, how can we like turn it on its head and make it work? And sometimes it doesn't work. Like it's just not the thing, but we might have committed to it. And that might be a collaboration, or it might be a show or an activation, and it might not work. But I always sit more on the side of like, you'll get more new opportunities from saying yes to other opportunities because it gives you visibility, it gives you access. You might meet one person at that show that the show might be a dud, but you might meet one person that could change things in that market, or that's tapped in somewhere else to a brand or whatever it might be. You don't know. So I lean towards the let's say yes because you never know. So I'm not the no guy. Just
yeah. And to be honest, there's still there. I mean, I probably lean more towards the like, this doesn't make sense. Are you sure? Is this something we should really do? But like all the time, Nick will surprise me where he's like, I brought this thing. I'm like, and then that leads to another thing.
It goes to an
Well, it'll be like that opportunity, which I didn't really see how there was value in it or how it fit into like what we're trying to do. But it's like that spawned a connection, which spawned a different connection. And sometimes it takes like years and multiple like touch points before you're in the middle of something. You're like, oh, none of this would have happened if we hadn't taken that gig for no money in a small market where we met this one person that started this whole like, cascade of events. So it's tricky. Like, obviously you need to, and now like we both have families. We can't say yes to every opportunity. There's only so many hours in the day, but you still, I feel like you have to have an open mind of like, I don't know, there could be something here. And maybe it's like, well, the person that it's coming through is someone that we trust. And it's like, well, if they're vouching for them, maybe it's worth a shot. We should do something. But it's different now than it was when we were first starting. Especially being in college, we're not worried financially the way you are like as an adult. And like, let's do everything. We'll stay up until 6 a.m. doing this one track versus if I stayed up to 6 a.m. doing a track now, I'd be wrecked for a week.
The other part of it is just maintaining relationships. So we're not always going to people asking for something, even if we've known them for a long time. I never like feeling, and I look back in text and say like, oh, damn, the last 3 or 4 texts that I've had with this person, exchanges, have started with me like asking for something. And I don't like that. I don't like that feeling. So I think it's important that as you build new relationships in this business, you have just real conversations and you hit people up and you congratulate them or you wish them happy birthday. Or if you see they have a moment on Facebook where they're down about something, like you drop them a line. Like that stuff is, people overlook it because there's so much noise and everybody is saying everything all the time. But like that moment in a person's life is clearly important. And I'm not saying you need to respond to everybody all the time, but those little things do go a long way with people. And so that's something just to note, not to overlook. And I feel like a lot of, not to stereotype, but a lot of new artists, like sometimes I feel like overlook the simple things, the thank yous, the pleases, the stuff that's just like, be a human, man. Even if you reject your record, like a thank you for listening is pretty awesome to get back. And like, at least they paid attention to us giving them some feedback. So just reminding people to be human. That's it. And I look,
Absolutely.
we all need those reminders, right? Like nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
Sometimes I, walk in a store and I don't know somebody's behind me and I just walk in and I forget to hold the door. Like it happens, but I think just being mindful of it and maintaining relationships is really important.
Absolutely. And I think there's so much value in what you both said. I mean, from the being a human, right, to the way that you both as a duo, it sounds like balance each other out, right? Nick is always looking to say yes, but not just saying yes randomly. You're looking for value and opportunities that come along. And then Danny, you're questioning it more. You're also saying you have to be realistic in terms of what else you have going on in your life with not pulling an all-nighter and things like that. So I'm hearing that you're both balancing each other with the opportunities. You aren't just randomly, blindly saying yes to everything that comes along. So there's like the wanting to say yes, looking for value. That's key. And then Danny, you're questioning, thing, and then you kind of come to decisions about things together. So there's a good example of how you're working together as a duo and how that can be beneficial. And then also, Nick, you're saying celebrate those wins, and also congratulations on your EDMA.
Thank you.
Sure. That's very exciting. And, I think there's so much here that can help other artists, and we could really be here for. I just wanted to get from you both, what's one unfiltered truth? You've been in this industry a long time. You have built a sustainable career, which many artists are not able to do. What's one unfiltered truth from both of you, that something that you didn't know and you know now that it takes to create a sustainable career in this industry?
I think I'm trying to think of how to put this exactly, but know that it's very difficult to sustain, like, whatever peak you might hit or high you might reach. That doesn't necessarily mean that you will always be there and that things will always be that successful. And to sort of plan accordingly, financially, emotionally. Like, very few artists have a trajectory that just goes like this forever, right? We've had, periods of like explosive growth. We've had periods where it just kind of like plateaus. And then we've had periods where like it falls off and you're like, well, I'm really glad we got this big advance for something and I didn't blow it all on a car because I haven't seen any money come in for 3 months or something like that. So it's difficult because it's not like a typical salary job where every 2 weeks you get some money in your bank account that you can count on, and you have you have health insurance and a 401k. You sort of have to build in all of those things for yourself if you want it, like treat it like a job, because if you just treat it like, oh, sick, which 1,000% I did for a very long time at the beginning, we were getting paid. You go to a show and I don't know, whatever type of fee you're getting, you're like, yo, I just did a 90-minute set and I got paid this and this is great. Like, it feels like monopoly money, sort of, but you have to treat it like, okay, let's step back and take a look at how much money have we pulled in this month? How much money have we pulled in over the last 3 months? How much of that can be attributed to things that are not going to recur like on the regular, and do your best to just sort of treat it as like, how is this going to make sense in a year from now? Or am I going to have the same opportunities? And if you do that, I feel like you will be in a much better position than getting real excited when things are hot and then get really, depressed and down when things have cooled off a little bit.
That's great advice. Mine was going to be just a little bit more of like macro advice. And I think it sums up our conversation today really well, is one record, one mix down, one collaboration that goes sour, like none of those singular things, one show, a dud show, one manager, whatever, none of those singular things will make or break your career in that moment. Like, if the kick drum is not right on this record after it comes out, it's okay, dude. You're going to make another one, probably the same day. And I think sometimes when you're in the moment of things happening, I can remember plenty of things happening in our career. The first one that comes to mind is when my computer died while Danny was in the bathroom at a headline show in Vegas. And like, obviously in that moment, it felt like the end of the world. And then like the next day I was super bummed about it. But like, now in the grand scheme of our career, it's a funny thing to mention on a podcast.
We got booked at that same room later.
Yeah, it was totally fine. But I think that you'll have way more at-bats. And so if you don't get the split you want on a song, and if it doesn't take off the way you expect it to on Spotify, or it doesn't get this look, like, you're an artist. You're always going to make another record. You're always going to do another show at some point, and you always have another at bat. So if you go into it with that in mind, I think that it can alleviate a lot of stress that this industry can by default give you going into all those situations.
Absolutely. So really, that emotional planning piece and the financial piece, but really knowing that things won't always pan out, there will be other at-bats, is a helpful mindset that has helped you continue to build and grow what you both have achieved so far.
Definitely.
100%.
Well, I wanted to thank you so much, both of you, for being here. It's great that we're finally getting to have these conversations. Thanks so much for listening to Psych Drop. In these conversations, we're going beyond the music, what it takes to build a sustainable career in electronic dance music. And I'll see you all in the next episode.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.